So we're going to look at a selection of picture storybooks as part of our 6+1 traits of writing. And the particular trait that we're looking at today is sentence fluency. With sentence fluency, you want your writing to be easy to read and follow. It should flow so smoothly and sound so interesting that people want to read it aloud. When your sentences don't flow, your writing sounds choppy and flat. Your reader would not want to read it aloud. So when we introduce the 6 traits to students, many teachers read aloud a text that exemplifies the trait. This is the notion of mentor text. Students learn the evidence of the trait from mentors and how to imitate it within their own writings. Such mentor text often includes picture storybooks like these ones. The text is short, which is important for a mini lesson, and engaging for students. Hi, it's Mr. C here from earlygradelessons.com, and we're going to look at this wonderful book by Jane Yolen called Owl Moon, and we're looking at it as a mentor text, a great example of sentence fluency being done by the author here. So as we read through the book, really see how the sentences come together, the beautiful wording that's used, the descriptive wording that describes one thing as being like something else. It's just a lovely write. It's called Owl Moon by Jane Yolen, and I'm Mr. C, the teacher. It was late one winter night, long past my bedtime, when Pa and I went owling. There was no wind, the trees stood still as giant statues, and the moon was so bright the sky seemed to shine. Somewhere behind us a train whistle blew, long and low, like a sad, sad song. I could hear it through the woolen cap Pa had pulled down over my ears. A farm dog answered the train, and then a second dog joined in. They sang out, trains and dogs, for a real long time. And when their voices faded away, it was as quiet as a dream. We walked on toward the woods, Pa and I. Our feet crunched over the crisp snow, and little gray footprints followed us. Pa made a long shadow, but mine was short and round. I had to run after him every now and then to keep up, and my short, round shadow bumped after me. But I never called out. If you go owling, you have to be quiet. That's what Pa always says. I had been waiting to go owling with Pa for a long time. We reached the line of pine trees, black and pointy against the sky, and Pa held up his hand. I stopped right where I was and waited. He looked up as if searching the stars, as if reading a map up there. The moon made his face into a silver mask, and then he called, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo," the sound of a great horned owl. "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." Again he called out, and then again. After each call he was silent, and for a moment we both listened. But there was no answer. Pa shrugged, and I shrugged. I was not disappointed. My brothers all said sometimes there's an owl and sometimes there isn't. We walked on. I could feel the cold, as if someone's icy hand was palmed down on my back, and my nose and the tops of my cheeks felt cold and hot at the same time. But I never said a word. If you go owling, you have to be quiet and make your own heat. We went into the woods. The shadows were the blackest things I had ever seen. They stained the white snow. My mouth felt furry, for the scarf over it was wet and warm. I didn't ask what kinds of things hide behind black trees in the middle of the night. When you go owling, you have to be brave. Then we came to a clearing in the dark woods. The moon was high above us. It seemed to fit exactly over the center of the clearing, and the snow below it was whiter than the milk in a cereal bowl. I sighed, and Pa held up his hand at the sound. I put my mittens over the scarf over my mouth and listened hard, and then Pa called, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." I listened and looked so hard my ears hurt and my eyes got cloudy with the cold. Pa raised his face to call out again, but before he could open his mouth, an echo came threading its way through the trees. "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." Pa almost smiled, and then he called back, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo," just as if he and the owl were talking about supper or about the woods or the moon or the cold. I took my mitten off the scarf off my mouth, and I almost smiled too. The owl's call came closer, from high up in the trees on the edge of the meadow. Nothing in the meadow moved. All of a sudden, an owl shadow, part of the big tree shadow, lifted off and flew right over us. We watched silently with heat in our mouths, the heat of all those words we had not spoken. The shadow hooted again. Pa turned on his big flashlight and caught the owl just as it was landing on a branch. For 1 minute, 3 minutes, maybe even 100 minutes, we stared at one another. Then the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without a sound. It flew back into the forest. "Time to go home," Pa said to me. I knew then I could talk, I could even laugh out loud, but I was a shadow as we walked home. When you go owling, you don't need words or warm or anything but hope. That's what Pa says. The kind of hope that flies on silent wings under a shining owl moon. Well, this is truly one of my favorite books to read, and its sentence fluency is just so impressive. The way Jane Yolen uses words just gives you that real feeling of the dark and the quiet. And I just love her descriptive words, just talking about the clothing and the breath being warm in them and the air being cold and the shadows being long and short. I love the idea of wondering what kinds of things you didn't ask about it that were hiding behind those black trees in the middle of the night. You have to be brave. And this is just beautifully described, this round clearing with the moon right above shining down. And instead of just saying it's, snow, it becomes snow below that's whiter than the milk in a cereal bowl. What a wonderful description. A round white cereal bowl just comes into my imagination with the milk right in it, all bright and white. No cereal in there, just that round bowl of cereal milk. What a terrific description for this round patch of snow that the moon's shining on. And I just love the use of her sentence as well, that they can be long sentences like this one. The owls came closer from high up in the trees on the edge of the meadow. Nothing in the meadow moved. In a shorter sentence. All of a sudden an owl shadow, part of the big tree shadow, lifted off and flew right over us. We watched silent with heat in our mouths and the heat of all those words we had not spoken. So you get these long sentences and then a nice short sentence thrown in. The shadow hooted again. Just lovely use of long sentences and short sentences, right? Simple sentences and complex sentences. Wonderful use of sentence fluency. And also word choice and just other parts too to this book. But really good one as a mentor text for sentence fluency, one of the 6+1 traits of writing. When you do your writing, are you going to use long sentences and short sentences, one after the other? What kind of descriptive words are you going to use? How are you going to describe things in your story? For more ideas on 6+1 traits of writing and for more stories like this, go to earlygradelessons.com.